All right. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for sitting through what's probably a way too long intro there, and we might try and get that trimmed for you in the future. Welcome to Husker Heat. I'm Andy Ketterson with CornNation. This is our podcast foray into the world of Huskers softball. As I've kind of been telling people, Jordy Ball might be done, but we're just getting started here at CornNation. I do a lot of the football recaps during football season. And a couple of years ago, I trucked up to East Lansing, Michigan for the Big Ten tournament to watch a player that I coached in hockey years ago. And as it turned out, I really enjoyed watching women's softball. And as I was talking to assistant coach Lori Sipple a few weeks ago, I just went up, introduced myself to her, kind of told her that story, and she, told her how I really enjoy watching this game, and she got this crooked little grin, just went addictive, isn't it? So anyway, that's who I am. You might have seen me on some of the Monday night therapies with John and Todd. And with me is another CornNation writer who just happens to be one of my rotten kids, Miley Ketterson. Introduce yourself and say a few words.
Yeah, I'm Miley. I just started writing for CornNation in August or September. And I usually write for volleyball, and then my father sucked me into doing softball, which turns out isn't that bad. I mean,
That's not how I remember it at all. I seem to remember somebody volunteer.
Vince.
But well, and here's the thing is
Well, I know nothing about the game. That's why I was a little hesitant at first because never watched, never played. So
and and one of the things is she's asked me a few questions, and I'll tell you, she asked really good questions, and she's picking up this game very fast. I didn't know what a stat head and she'd gotten about volleyball. I read her stuff in volleyball, and I was like, I did not realize you fell so hard for that sport. So trust me when I say
Googled
she's
everything when it came to stat like abbreviations and stuff. I Googled everything, so not like
right. Well, yeah, we already had the talk about the DP, and we'll talk about this season near the end of the show. One of the things I'd like to do every week is we'll just bring up some rules, some part of the game, some part of women's softball that is very different from baseball, and just kind of just try and teach some of the little things about the game as I've been picking up for the past 2 years. One thing I want to start with is we just want to let everybody know we are recapping every game. We'll get those up as quick as we can after the games end. Um, I'll write some of them. Miley will. We also have another writer, Jaden Miller, who will be joining us on this podcast eventually, but she's out of service right now. And then I'm also going to write, and maybe these guys will too sometimes, but we'll do a big preview of the weekend, which will generally be Wednesday or Thursday, depending on when the first games are. What else? That's probably the big stuff about what we're going to do. And we want to try and do the podcast every Tuesday at 8 p.m. We'll start trying to do 30, 40 minutes. Don't want to make it overly long. We're feeling our way out here too. But let's get started with tonight, and let's just talk about the bad news first. The very first game, third inning, Jordy Ball, perhaps, and I dare people to argue with me on this, might be the most meaningful transfer of that type in the history of any college sports. A two-time All-American, a two-time national champion who left her hometown to return back to play with a softball team that, if we're honest, is a couple levels below Oklahoma, but just about everybody else is a level below Oklahoma. And we're just, we're in the NCAAs most every year, but we're not Oklahoma. And you get a pitcher like that, that's the one position on the field that can change your team in a quick and big way. And what happens? She blows up her ACL right out of the gate. She's done for the season. Miley, what do you remember about that?
I mean, it's just weird that she went through full warm-ups with like the next game or the next game, like the game after
I
that or
think
something.
I think it was 2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days later, she went through full warm-ups and then all of a sudden gets back to Lincoln and it's torn, which
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to do warm-ups or anything on a torn ACL, so
Well,
that was crazy.
from what I've heard about the torn ACL, though, you can play on those. I remember Coy Detmer just bracing his knee at Colorado one year and tried to play a game or two. Chris Chelios, for you hockey fans out there, a Hall of Famer for the Blackhawks and Red Wings, played about, I believe, 7 or 8 years on a torn ACL before he finally had it, because he just braced it up. And in hockey, your legs are never straight. You're just constantly in that bent knee position, so you've got it, pretty much braced the whole time. But yeah, that's how she'd be able. Is I guess it's not super painful. And then something else I read about her is I guess she's got a really high pain threshold, so that might have had something to do with it. Now,
good for her, 'cause I could never.
now in the short term, we've seen what her loss means, and let's get the bad news out of the way. We really saw what losing her meant this last weekend, when the pitching staff just got pounded hard for 3 games, and then even the last game, they give up 5 runs in 7 innings, and that's still not great. How would you rate the pitching staff so far this year?
Oh, God. As someone that doesn't really know softball that well, that's just learning, out of 10, I would give them like a 4 or 5.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just, it hasn't been pretty.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, it's not a staff loaded with experience. Like, she didn't walk into a situation where there was a lot of experienced starters. Like the year before, they had Sarah Harness, who returned. She has the most experience. She started regularly for Nebraska, and she transferred in the year before, I want to say Southern Illinois. I'm not 100%. Don't correct me if I'm wrong, but she threw about 140, 50 innings last year. The next most experienced starter is Kaylin Kinney, who injured her hand, and I want to say the 7th, 8th game of the season, like the second weekend, and she was supposed to be the 3rd pitcher last year. She's done. That's why Courtney Wallace and Sarah threw so many innings last year. And then the other 2 now, they're just having to step up and throw. Go ahead, say it.
They're freshmen, aren't they?
Pair of freshmen, Emerson Cope and Caitlin Olinsky.
Yeah.
And they're battling, and they both have good stretches in relief, and then they just get ripped on sometimes, and not unusual.
We saw that. I mean, when they played Wichita State the second time, and when they played Missouri the second time, like, Wichita State game just started out bad. The Missouri game started out a little better, but then they just started running through us.
Yeah, and they were we walked a few too many, which has been a problem. And they I'll give them this. You saw it more in the first 3 weekends. They battle. I mean, they get in there and they battle, and they do their best, and they've thrown up some decent performances. We'll talk about it in a minute. They pitched very, very well in California. I thought overall, they got knocked around a little, but then they kept coming back. They combined to throw a shutout against number 23 Oregon. So I think there's potential there, and that's kind of the short term. That's where we are this year. Is these guys, if we're gonna go to the NCAA tournament, then these guys have to grow up fast. And then now the long term is not that bad. More likely than not, I can't see any situation where the NCAA is not going to give Jordy a medical red shirt. So she'll still have 2 years left. So the Jordy Ball show still
even said she's going to have 2 years left when she announced her tear.
Yeah,
she said that she'd be back for 2. I mean, she has to get that.
She'll get that.
Yeah.
But that was nice to hear her say that no matter what, she's still planning on pitching both those years.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that home opener weekend a little. Get that out of the way first. What were the scores? I believe Wichita 7-1 beat them 7-1.
Wichita again 17-4.
Yeah. And here's the thing: is the last time we played Wichita, is I made the horrible mistake. I was thinking about going down to the Stillwater Regional and watching it again. And
I thought you did go down. Or was that?
That was the year before, and I was kind of like, well, that's still. I'm sorry, Stillwater folks. That's just not a nice town. It's kind of gross. And I was just like, God, I will go anywhere but Stillwater. And then they went to Stillwater. Like,
you go to Iowa City over Stillwater?
Maybe. I mean, Stillwater, you go down the interstate, you take a left and go about 20 miles out into the middle of nowhere. And then they've got the animal pens and stuff like right around the campus. So that smells just kind of wafting around. But
so
I didn't come here to insult Stillwater. But what I missed was one of the most exciting games ever. they played Wichita. It was there was a loser go home elimination game, and they just kept sticking around. They're down. Wichita would go up 3, they'd come down to the bottom, they didn't get 1. Hang around. They just kept staying within 2 runs. They're tied, or they go into the bottom of the 7th, down 3, score 3 to tie it up. Nobody scores in the first extra inning, in the 8th. 9th inning rolls around. Wichita gets 2. Oh crap! They come back, get 3. Ava Breadwell, maybe Ava Breadwell scores that winning run. You can see Rhonda Revelle up the third baseline there on her tiptoes, trying to make sure she got in there. And then this happens, and the celebration's on. And I just had to wonder if the way Wichita played and hit the ball this weekend, if they were maybe a little pissed and remembering that, because combined score was 24-5. I think. and then we ran into Missouri, who's probably the better team there. I think they moved up to
rank 2.
Yeah, they moved up to number 12. Yeah, I think they're up to 12 this week.
Were they? I thought on the live stats it said 14, but who knows?
Right. And like I said, then they lose to them 10-6 when that was them being feisty too. They're down 10-1 in that game. And in the bottom of the 5th, looking their second straight Mercy Rule game in the eye, they scored 5 runs or lost 10-6, but at least went the distance. And then, it's kind of tough to go, hey, the pitching improved, and Coach Revelle was talking about how Olinsky looked a lot better in the 4th game. And that's what you need to do as a coach when you're throwing the freshmen in those situations, is look at the bright side. It didn't look like the greatest stat line, but she went 5 innings. She gave up 4 runs, but went 5 innings instead of an inning and 2/3. And looked a lot tougher on Sunday. You watched that game, I believe. Did you catch
the last game in California?
The last game in Lincoln, the Missouri.
Oh, yeah, I did watch that game.
What did you think of Olinsky in that game?
Oh, I'm still trying.
How'd she look like?
Was she the last?
She was the lefty, the starter.
Oh, she started. I thought she played actually really good. The first 3 games of the weekend, all the teams just came out guns blazing, but we finally actually subsided their attack for a while. But then it happened. But I thought she pitched pretty good to start.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice comeback, especially given just how she kind of just couldn't find the play, had trouble finding the play, got knocked around some in that first start against Wichita. So I like with the freshmen, you just have to go, they're not going to come out and be Jordan Ball. They've just got to come out, be themselves, improve like they can. Like, one thing I was going to talk about a little later, but let's just bring it up now since we're going this way, is it's unbelievable. If you want to talk about a support system for a college pitcher, here's who you've got helping you now. You have Liv Farrell, who won 20 games for them 2 years ago when they won the Big Ten tournament, was on the all-tournament team and all that. She's now a full-time assistant. Last year, Courtney Wallace she went pitching. She had to be up around 230, 40 innings by the time the year was over, just, doing all the workload with Kaylin Kinney hurt. And I think she won 26 games, and now she's a grad assistant. And now you've got Jordy Ball, who's basically going to just be acting like an unpaid assistant with the team, helping out in any way she can.
Well, she's getting paid, but
no, go ahead. What's that?
I said she's getting paid, but NIL.
Sure, but
technically,
but someone like that who's been pitching as long as she has, like one thing when I went to the preseason press conference, and they were asking, Billy Andrews is there, and they were asking her about how she was fitting in with the rest of the team. And Billy was like, well, we used to play on a travel team together. As people forget, Jordy's from here. A lot of the Nebraska team's local. So these guys have known each other for years.
Well, what I found weird was that there's so many girls from Nebraska on the Wichita State team.
Right.
It's why didn't Rhonda recruit them, and now they're at Wichita State?
Well, but who's to say she didn't? And they just, because Wichita's got that Wichita's got a pretty storied program of their own down there, both baseball and softball. So doesn't surprise me they're probably going to poach a few from their neighbors to the north.
Yeah.
and then one thing I was going to say though is one of the assistant coaches, and she's been there, like Rhonda's been there like 37 years. You have Lori Sipple, who was an All-American at Nebraska back when I was going there, which should tell you how old we are. and
You.
well, she was down there with me, so we're
Oh, you
about
mean her? I thought you meant me. I was like, I'm not
no,
as old
no,
as you.
you're just getting older. That's all.
No, you're just 60.
Not yet. I'm not. I've got a few months.
Almost.
Damn
Like,
you.
what, 3 months?
Something like that. Shut up.
60.
Anyway, but Lori Sipple was an All-American at Nebraska. I think still holds all their pitching records. Her career ERA, just if you want to get wowed a little, was something like 0.57. Her one season, she had an ERA of like 0.38 or something like that. Those are still records. I think she has win records, strikeout records, you name it. Had, like I said, got to meet her, very nice lady, but she was from Canada and has just stayed in Lincoln since the 80s. Like, I guess she took 1 year off and then boom, Rhonda hires her, and they've been coaching together, since probably late 80s, early 90s. But at one point she went back and coached Canada's softball team in the Olympics, and they won a bronze medal. So she's a medal winning head coach who apparently is like just loves what she does. And you can kind of see it in Rhonda and Lori. But yeah, the point I was making was what a support system for pitchers. You've just got a staff full of older knowledge, younger knowledge, and that's why I love how I think they're going to develop them over time. So I wanted to pop that in there. Real quick, let's talk about those first 3 weekends. They started off in Mexico, and yeah, well, it's like that first game was just straight out of hell. I felt so bad for them because when they did the preseason thing, the meet and greet, they had the press conference, then had like a fan day in the Hawks field, and I mean the line was like all the way down out the field, out the door. I go out the door to leave, and it's like halfway down the building. An amazing number of people showed up. You could just tell the players were just itching to get off the practice field and play a game. Ball gets hurt, and they get mercy ruled by Washington, and then they got beat by Duke, about 6-1.
Yeah.
And this is one thing I'll say about this team, and I've said it especially with this group for the last couple of years, is that they are just resilient like nothing you've ever seen. They bounced back to win their last 2 games against, who was it, Fullerton and...
No, Fullerton was in New Mexico.
No, Fullerton, you're right. Hang on, I'll get
Utah Valley.
Yes, a surprisingly tough Utah Valley team who gave Washington a good game. And then Long Beach.
The beach.
Yeah, the beach. I like that. I thought that was kind of cool when they refer to it.
They say that in volleyball too. You should really watch more volleyball.
Well, I just didn't catch the Long Beach game, I guess, volleyball girl.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, what the hell? What the hell? So they come back to win those 2 games. Then they go to New Mexico, and they play, I believe it was like New Mexico State right out of the gate, and ran into the
twice.
What's it? Yeah, they run into this pitcher named Desiree Spearman, a true freshman who was out there doing her Shohei Ohtani impression. For first game, she throws a 1-hit shutout to beat the Huskers and hits a home run. And the next game, she's playing shortstop and hits another home run. And I think she went like 4 for 6, 2 home runs, and stole a base. Well, and then while shutting out the Huskers, they lost that one. They won the next one. My big joke was, I would never ever suggest tampering with another team's players, but I hope Rhonda found a way to tamper. I would love to see her in a Husker uniform. New Mexico's nice and all that, but I really think we can make a home for her in Lincoln. That's when I respect an opponent where I'm like, I want her to play for us. So, but yeah, that was something else. And then they won their next 3 and had to come back they actually had to come back in every game period. And they came back and won 4. They had to come back. What's that?
I thought Utah was in New Mexico, but that was in California.
Was that in California?
They play so many damn games, I can't keep them straight sometimes.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because what they do is they call them tournaments or invitationals. or whatever, but there's no tournament winner. What they're doing is they're just getting a bunch of teams down in warm weather places, like really warm weather in Mexico. They were, I think, in the 80s there, New Mexico, Southern Cal, and they just get a bunch of teams there, cram in 4 or 5 games just so they can get games under their belt. And it's kind of a nice thing because in baseball, they should do that because the Southern teams have such an advantage normally of just being to play at home right away, and they won't go on the road. They will not go play the Northern schools until we're in the 60s and 70s. And there's nothing you can do to make them. So it's just kind of, pissy little thing they do. Screw you, South. But
well, you see College of Charleston like canceled a game with the Huskers and like refused to for
right,
baseball. They refused to reschedule it or something.
right. But I think they were playing down there.
Yeah, they're playing down there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think they're just on such a tight travel type deal when they zoom in, play 3 games, zoom out. There's not really.
Well, College of Charleston were the ones that refused to reschedule. It wasn't Nebraska.
Yeah,
Nebraska wanted to.
Yeah, that'd be a weird one though. Just to they probably would like talking double header, and if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then the next weekend they go to Southern California, and that's where you saw the bounce back in them because they had a small lead on San Diego State. They end up losing 3-2 in the bottom of the 8th in extra innings. Then came the UCLA game that I'm telling you what, that was a straight to the bar game because I was watching that, and it was time for a drink after that one. I am not kidding. They were up they were just beating the brakes off them. I think it was like they blew up, was it 5-run like 4th inning or something like that. And then I think that was Sydney Gray. Is that when she hit her homer? She hit her bombs down in New Mexico. I think Billy or somebody ended up like bopped another home run in the top of the 7th to take, make it 7-4 to 8-4. And then they fall apart in the bottom of the 7th and give up 5 runs. And you're wondering, how do you bounce back from that? And God, how do you, because you got to get up and play another ranked team, Oregon, in the morning. And they just go, and then they just went in there and pounded Oregon and got their first, and I think so far only shutout of the year. And that was just something. And I had a chance to ask Rhonda about that. Like, what do you guys do, coaches, seniors? How do you deal with a loss like that? That's just got to eat at you. And Rhonda said, well, it's just kind of a life philosophy. You look at the glass as half full or half empty. And the message we were trying to get across to them was, you're right there. You're this close to beating these guys. And she said, now maybe there's some little things you can do. There's a lot of hard work you can do to get there. But first of all, you've got to believe you can play with them. And that they did. And then they play Utah. And what happened there?
Oh God, they fell apart. They were up, I think 6-1, 5-1, something like that, and then they.
Was it 5-1? Yeah, 5-1 or 5-0. You watch. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was like 5-1, 5-0, something like that. But then they ended up losing. I think what was it, 9-5, 9-6, 9-5.
9-5.
Yeah, they fell apart.
Oh man, that one hurt to watch. But then what do they do after that?
Yeah, they beat Cal State Fullerton right after that. I mean, they went down early. They went down, I think 2-0, 3-0 right at the beginning. Like it literally carried over from the game before, but then they came back. So
well, and also it was like after the New Mexico, and I said, well, here's some teams that aren't that good, and they're having to come back from like 2-0. I think one game had to come back from 4-0, and then they would explode. And I'm like, so what they really need to do to give themselves a chance in California is get on the board first. And I think they did that in all but the Fullerton games. Yeah. They jumped on teams early, but then couldn't hold the lead. But it was still 2-3 wasn't a bad weekend because boy, that so easily could have been 4-1,
Mm-hmm.
And that was against teams that all went to the NCAA tournament last year. Utah played in the Women's College World Series. Somebody else there. Fullerton won their
UCLA probably did.
UCLA actually was the number 2 overall seed and lost in the first round. They got upset.
I saw something on Instagram or like a couple days ago, but the last time that Oklahoma wasn't ranked number 1 UCLA was put at number 1 and Oklahoma was put at 2, and Oklahoma went out and beat UCLA like 14-0 or something,
Yeah.
just to show them that like, hey, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. You poked the bear, you woke the sleeping giant.
And Oklahoma's been number 1 ever since then.
Right. So anyway, what we have coming up this weekend is the Razorback Rumble. So definitely the coolest name of these invitationals. And what they've got there is
better.
What's that?
The Big Red Invitational is better.
I like Rumble though. I like the name. Now, of course, everything's
Royal Rumble.
I mean, I like that Razorback Rumble. Anyway, and Arkansas is ranked 20th. Wichita split a pair with Arkansas,
but they're not playing them anymore, right?
What's that?
They're not playing Arkansas.
That's what I was working up to. But Wichita, I think, beat them like 3-2 or something like that, and then Arkansas beat Wichita 15-4, and just beat the hell out of them. But yeah, there is already a canceled game. The Thursday game against Arkansas has been canceled. I looked up the weather. Friday looks worse. Like Thursday looks like chance of thunderstorms all day, like 50 to 70%, but Friday just looks like 90% most of the day. So I wouldn't. But that was going to be their only game against Arkansas.
Yeah.
And so they canceled that, and then they think a game with Northern Iowa and St. Francis scheduled for Friday, and then another St. Francis game in South Alabama scheduled for Saturday, and they're done. And with unless they get a break with the weather, they just might be going down to play 2 games. And that's why I'm kind of watching this. See, okay, now if Friday gets called off, do they just call it all off? Because at that point they're going, what's the point of just flying down to play 2 games in a day and come back? So
I mean, that's way different than like hockey in college, because we travel all the way to freaking Minot, North Dakota, and play 2 games. Good God.
Yeah, and no matter what it was doing outside. I remember the time we went to Fargo, and I drove up to Fargo after you guys did because I had to work.
Oh yeah.
And it literally starts snowing, or snow starts accumulating. Literally, like somebody drew a line at the Fargo city limits, and then like by the time I get to my exit, here's a van like down in the snow in the sunken median there, and it's 15 below that night. But you know what? Hockey doesn't care. You need a little more help from the weather for softball. That's for sure.
Well, when we went to Red Wing, Minnesota that one time too.
God, we'll tell that story another time. Well, anyway, so what they're looking at though is if they get their other games in, you've got a Northern Iowa team. I looked up; they're 9-6. Doesn't look like they've played a lot of tough competition. And then you got 2 games against St. Francis. They're 11-8, but it really looks like they haven't played anyone but South Alabama at 12-5-1 might be a problem. I was going down their schedule. They've played some decent teams, given some decent teams some good games, and if they get to do all this, that could be the tough one, because right now they've got a chance, especially with Arkansas off the table, to kind of right the ship, get back over 500. Right now I believe they're 8-10 after losing the 4 straight. So if they can come back from their 12-10, I think they'll have a few more smiles on their face, and then it's back to Lincoln again the next week.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what's going on with softball this week. Now, what I was talking about, and I just think of things where I go, where I've looked and gone, what the hell's going on here? There's a different rule for hit batsmen. In baseball, if you just stand there and let it drill you, the ump might tell you to, get back up there. They don't do it a lot. But in baseball, you're expected to make an effort to get out of the way. And in softball, you don't have to. I was watching girls just stand there, not move a muscle, and get thumped. And I'm like, well, you didn't even try that. And then they are getting first, and then it's happening again and again. And I'm like, well, why don't they have to move? Don't they?
Well, in that last game against Missouri, I think our pitchers hit five girls, something like that. I was like, Jesus Christ, we're hitting so many batters.
Right. But they can just sit there and let it thump them, and that's hey, this is the days of Moneyball, and I don't know if anybody watched the movie Moneyball, but one of the things that they really got into at the Oakland A's back in those days was they're trying to get a hold of these guys who are cheap but walk a ton, and maybe not get a lot of hits, but they're getting hit, they're walking a lot. And it was like Brad Pitt who played Billy Bean in the movie, who was the general manager, said, the guy's like, this guy is only hitting like 270, and he kept going, but he gets on base. Oh, he gets a lot of walks, and he goes, so he gets a lot of walks. It's like he gets on base. Why do I give a shit whether it's a hit or a walk? And yeah, so that's part of softball is let it drill you. And I guess 2 years ago they made the rule change that they didn't have to get out of the way. They just wanted the pitchers to get better control, work on their control more. And what's kind of funny is I've noticed that some of them will lean into it, and unless they really do an exaggerated job of it, they're going to count that too. I think they're supposed to just go, if the pitcher doesn't want them on first base, then not so far inside. That's all I have. Miley, any thoughts on last weekend, the upcoming weekend, the weekend after that, when they're back in Lincoln, hopefully with a happier homecoming this time?
We just need to win more games. Pretty simple. I mean, we can't be losing as badly as we have been.
Yeah, that was a rough weekend. I think I made the comment in the article that if there's no place like home, I'd be jumping in the tornado faster than Dorothy, going, anything's got to be better than this. And I just felt bad for those guys because they were so excited to play at home, and then to just get pounded around like that. But like I said, you could see some of the growth in that last game. Seeing Alinsky, who took a beating, go out there and do you still want a better performance down the road? Sure, but just at this point, you just want to see them making improvement. And I felt like at times, especially, she would get to nibbling corners a little too much, maybe aiming it, taking a little off, and then starting to get a little wild, and then putting it right down the middle, and they're smacking it off the wall. So I was happy to see her like step it up in that last game.
I mean, props to the coaches there too. To get them back in the right mental state after taking such a beating. I mean, I wish I had a coach like that in college.
now. Yeah, I noticed one thing with Rhonda Revelle, and simple with her, but Revelle, she's been around this game a long time, and having coached my hockey myself, I'm telling you what, if you are a good coach, and I think she's a fantastic coach, then every year you're going to be better than the year before. She might be in it 37 years. I guarantee you she's learning something new every year that she didn't know the year before, instead of acting like she knows. And she just seems to handle this team so well, just has a really good attitude, doesn't, they had obviously had some a lot of different rough things happen right out of the gate. And she's just right there going, we're going to be fine. Just play your game. Just think ahead, learn from the losses, etc. And doesn't seem to get too worked up. I tell you what, she got a little worked up Friday night at the Wichita game. Their big inning, the Huskers were out of it. Here was one out, girl on first. They smack one down the line, and Gray goes to Canada to Bacon at first. They roll the long double play around the field, and here comes the foul ball. And what happens? Runner goes back to first, steals second, and the girl had hit into the double play, knocks one out of the park for 2 runs. They get 3 more runs, and all of a sudden, what would have still been trailing just 2-1 at the time, and it was a pretty competitive game, becomes 7-1. And I say that because I think I described it in the article as Rhonda sauntered out from the dugout to express her displeasure with the call. Now, she's not the jump up and down and scream type, but even from right field where I was watching the game, I could see the expression on her face, and it wasn't one of I just want an explanation. She was unhappy, and I suspect everyone got a lot unhappier when that ball sailed over the fence. But no, it's really a great group of girls. If you get to just like watch them engage with each other, it's a real team, and I still think there could be special things down the road for them, and that we'll forget about this weekend. But we'll find out next weekend in Arkansas. You lucked out, Arkansas. You weenies, thunderstorms, puss. I don't like it. We're ready to go. Don't cancel. It's 60-70%. It's not 100.
Oh
All
my
right. That was me doing my best John rant there. Anything else, Miley?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, for anybody who might have been watching us tonight, we really appreciate you tuning in. just like everything people do new, we're gonna, we'll tweak things here, we'll fool around a little, but we hope to be doing this. Hopefully, we hope to be doing this for a while. This wasn't just something we threw together because it was going to be the Jordan Ball year. I'm really now kind of fascinated to see how these girls battle back and try and make a regional this year and see if anything can happen. But that's all I got for tonight. Miley, pleasure doing my first podcast with my daughter. I'd be lying if I didn't say that felt a little special, but we'll get this going. We'll see you guys again next week. And other than that, go Big Red. All right. Good night, everybody.